Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, and I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Hall. Reed should be here very, very soon, but the Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. The title of this episode is the Training Camp Updates, short and simple. And now we are joined by a very special guest, returning guest, Mr. Anthony Armstrong, former wide receiver of the Washington Redskins. How are you doing, brother?
I'm good. The weather's great. I actually just got back from the DMV. I've been knocking things off of my list. Like I've had a whole bunch of stuff that's been swirling in my head. And I can say, taking this vacation, this little break, I was able to say, I ain't touching this until I get back. Just holler at me in August, and I've been knocking stuff out, man. So I'm feeling productive. I'm revived. I'm rejuvenated. I'm ready to go.
That's what I like to hear. You know, the DMV has that sort of impact on some people, but not most. Anthony, you're a very special individual. But that being said, I want to talk about your return to Ashburn. This is a different training camp than it has been in previous seasons. We don't need to get into that too much because I want to ask you just about your experience at training camp. I know you got to see some former teammates as well and be able to enjoy that day, not being on the field, sweating, you know, running, doing gassers and everything like that. So how was it from your standpoint?
Man, it felt good to be back at training camp and just to be back in that environment. It was like being in the locker room again, you know, just being around your boys, getting to laugh, getting to share stories. And I mean, you're in a brotherhood where, you know, we have shared experiences. And, you know, I feel like I heard Doc Walker say this, and it's true. We had shared experiences. So you see those guys on the field, and it's like, man, you don't think that it was that long ago that you were out there on that field running around, you know, and especially after seeing the lack of attendance over the past few years at training camp, it was good to see just the fans represent and show up. And hell, I was flattered. A few folks were like, you look familiar. I mean, oh, Armstrong, oh my gosh. So shout out to y'all, man, for coming up and speaking, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, the Burgundy Gold, man, we do not forget faces. That's for sure. We love our players, man.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, just like the whole experience, you being out there, it was like good vibes, great vibes. As like a player, like obviously you've been on the field and you've been around, like you saying you had some highlights, you were around the good times, some good times. Like just like the good vibes from like training camp and like a new era and like just like the beginning of like a new season, like the freshness of it, especially with like an ownership thing and like a new quarterback and all that. Does that carry over to the field and like motivate you even more? Or is there more of just like this is my job, it's week one coming up, I'm already motivated anyway type thing?
You know, whenever you have fans out there, it motivates you, because especially in today's day and age, that there's going to be a clip up on Twitter here in a little bit. And there's always a joke of saying, like, if your mama's in the stand, you're not trying to get a touchdown scored on you. You're not trying to have a big play happen on you. So when you're on the field, you're performing. You're really trying to put on the show. You want to do your job, but it doesn't hurt that you put a little something extra on it to get the crowd riled up. And, you know, just like I said, and not having anybody at training camp over the past couple of years has to feel good to see some people out there screaming and cheering for you, and not having, you know, sell the team, like people that would literally show up just to hold up that sign. Right. Now it's just says sold, you know. So it definitely spills onto the field. And I mean, I can honestly say, since the 720, I feel like the good vibes have stayed with Washington football Twitter. Like, just, you can't, even when they try to throw something negative in there, it's kind of like, meh, whatever, put that to the side. You know, new ownership, it's a fresh new page. Like, let's keep rocking. We're not even worried about that, you know. So I'm excited, man. That's the biggest thing, is that it is gonna make its way onto the field. Yeah, I think it will. I mean, you can't sit here and say it's gonna get you an extra 2 wins, but whenever it's the fourth quarter and the stadium is full of burgundy and gold and not half of it sold out to visiting, you know, fans, That's going to be a big thing. And you're going to get a couple of wins this year just off of that fact. People can't hear. It's going to be penalties. So there's going to be some special moments this year.
And Anthony, I absolutely loved what you said about the fan base, and kind of the bad, negative stuff being said. It doesn't matter. It's almost like this fan base is a raging inferno of positivity, and it doesn't matter what bucket of water of negativity they throw on it. It's still just flaming out of the house, and that's awesome to see because it's going to blend over to week one, and I'm expecting it to. But that being said, let's take this to on the field. You know, you're not able to see all the minute details, but what was the biggest takeaway that you took away from the practices with training camp?
Just that day, it was the second day of training camp, so they really weren't that far into the playbook, weren't in pads yet. But I was just impressed by the amount of the shifts and the motions and where different people lined up. And they weren't in instances where it was just for show, like, oh, we're just going to line the running back out all the way out to the right. But then you're always going to motion them back inside. Like that's window dressing.
Right.
With Antonio Gibson, if you line him out wide, he's a legitimate threat. He's a receiver, right? So like seeing EB utilize that and motion different people into the backfield, and you see Terry going behind, all that creativity. One, it puts a lot on the players, but two, they're getting invested because they get to do that fun stuff. Like I can't. There's so many times where linemen would be begging the offensive coordinator, the head coach, every single week. Hey man, let me throw a pass. Let me catch a pass. There's a former lineman there's a lineman that had to play tight end who has good hands, or he thinks he has good hands, and he's begging EB, hey EB man, let me get that tight end screen, man. And EB's gonna run it in practice one time. It's gonna mess around, be a play down the line. That keeps players invested. You know, they're willing to work 79 other plays just to think that one time they may get their number called. So it's fun. It's going to be an exciting year.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely good to keep it fun. Like you said, keep the guys kind of locked in and motivated. But I saw on Twitter that somebody asked you whenever you put you said you wanted to see De'Ami Brown when he ran that deep route. I think he ended up dropping the ball, but there was a red line on the field, and you said you wanted to see him kind of get closer to the red line, hug the red line a little bit more. Can you just explain that? And then also kind of like to piggyback off that, what are some things that De'Ami can do this year in this offense with Eric Bieniemy that maybe he couldn't do in Scott Turner's offense? Because I think whenever we drafted him in the third round, a lot of people thought like, okay, this is a burner. This is like a big play waiting to happen in an offense that was lacking some big plays, like big play guys. So yeah, just explain what you were talking about with the red line, and also what can he do in this offense with Eric Bieniemy to kind of highlight him on the field this year.
Your mic went out, Anthony. There you go.
There we go. I'm back. I muted myself. I heard a kid coming down the stairs, and they're loud. They're really loud. Starting off with the red line on the football field, you see it in practice fields. This red line is drawn from the sideline on both sides, about 6-7 yards from sideline. It ends up being a landmark for receivers when they run their go routes. And when you really get into offenses, there's a lot that has to do with spacing and where you are on the field. Generally, that red line is as far wide as you need to be on most routes. And so if De'Ami was able to stay on that red line, that gives the quarterback 6 yards of space, and 6.5, 7 if you include a yard out of bounds, that he can throw the ball into, and you can fade into that spot. And so the challenge is, and it's almost like a sobriety test. I don't know why that comes to mind, but if you literally go walk down the line in the parking lot, have your friend toss a ball just over your head diagonally, and you just track and follow it. And naturally, as you go over your head, you'll fade to that spot. But what he did in that particular clip is that he faded to the spot, but he kept the ball off of his left shoulder in the video. So I wanted him to track the ball over his head and then catch it into his right hip, into his right pocket, rather than try to catch it inside. Because what happens is good DBs are going to play into you, right? They're trying to widen you. St. Juice is really good at this. I think the play against Houston where he tipped it, he played into the receiver. The ball is inside. Now he can volleyball tip it back in. Forbes was really good at this in college where he got a lot of picks. And you see, Forbes was in a position where he could have potentially, if the ball is more inside, he picks that off. Fortunately, it was outside. Now he makes that catch if he can, leave the DB inside, extend his arms outside, maybe fade late. This is small technique stuff to work on, but that's what that red line is for. And the things that he can bring, Dyami Brown can bring to the offense, obviously his speed, but the enemy's creativity in formations and getting people in different spots creates a variety of matchups, and it puts a strain on the defense. So I know that the play that I saw Dyami catch a touchdown on Cam Curl, I think Curl had found his way into like the Buffalo nickel, like he was playing linebacker essentially, and Dyami was number 3, 1, 2, 3, third receiver from the outside. And he just ran right up the middle of the field because they forced him into a cover 2 coverage. Safeties are out wide. Diami's too fast, right? So him being able to get schemed into spots to have success is what EB is going to bring to it and get the most out of Dyami Brown. Now, if he starts to develop the over-the-shoulder catch, now he's got down the field outside. Like, hey man, go beat him on a go, and we'll just throw it to you, and you'll be able to fade it.
Right.
I got you. Now, to wrap this up, I only have a couple more questions for you, Anthony. First one being, did you watch the Pivot interview with Terry McLaurin?
I haven't seen it yet. I've seen a couple of clips, so I'm going to have to tune in. The one I saw an Instagram post, it was one about saying, it's like you got to just decide how bad you want it, and how hard you're going to work for it. And I mean, that's just something that resonates with me, just how I got to the league. You know what I'm saying? Like playing ball in Odessa, Texas for $200 out of a D2 after missing your draft and failing the physical. Pretty sure everybody was like, you trying to go to the NFL? Oh, okay. All right. But look, fast forward 3-4 years, they like, this son of a bitch is on ESPN right now, starting and catching touchdowns. So, I respect Terry's grind and him, him saying that, like, that's how he approaches it the right way, right? He's going to do what he has to do to be prepared.
Yeah, and he's definitely invested into not just fixing himself, but asking for help, and not a lot of people are willing to do so. But my question, spurning off of that, the wide receiver unit, obviously you played wide receiver here in Washington. Some big takeaways from that unit. Not a lot has been said about Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson. It seemed like Dyami Brown and Terry have really dominated the headlines as wide receivers. What did you see overall from that group?
I think Jahan is going to eat. He's another guy that is able to operate on all 3 levels. I think that Terry can do that as well. And now you're seeing Dyami taking the top off and getting utilized more than just a random go route here and there. The guy I'm a little worried about, and I get this just little inclination, something that feels like Curtis Samuel, he might end up being this odd man out.
Really?
Just for the simple fact that they bring in Pringle. Pringle's got some downfield speed. Right, like whenever the Kansas City had the most success, even though they did win a Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill, they had Tyreek Hill, and he was able to stretch the defense vertically, and that puts so much strain and creates even larger holes in the mid and the intermediate. But if you're forced to not have as much speed down the field, defenses are going to play a little bit closer. Right? They're not going to be like, you ain't going to throw it that deep. I ain't worried about you. Like, they're going to challenge you. So now you got Dyami out here that's going to run by somebody. You got Pringle that can run by somebody. Obviously, Terry can take it up top, and so can Jahan, but those guys are also dangerous underneath as well. So I feel like you got to get into the preseason and see how Curtis is really getting used, because, practice is one thing. They script the coverages for the most part to get looks at certain things, but just the way that EB spreads the ball around so much, you haven't heard Curtis's name a lot. So getting in the game and seeing how he's utilized would be something to see. But I just feel like if there's some weird thing and there's like a splash, like he may be the odd man out, and it's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, because the playmakers on this team, there's plentiful of them. And the fact that Dyami and then Pringle showing what he can do, it really does add some elements to this offense that we weren't expecting. But to speaking of that, let's talk about Sam Howell. You know, you being a wide receiver, you know what you kind of look for in a quarterback. This being his first time coming into training camp in the professional level as the starter. How did he look in training camp? What are your biggest takeaways or some things you notice that you should work on?
You know, the first day, the very first time they broke the huddle, and it was day 2, you can see EB had to get everybody back in there and restart it. So I think for Sam is you may have to just kind of make sure he lets himself know, hey, I'm the leader. I'm the captain of this ship, you know, and just remind himself that. Even though he is looking across the huddle from Terry McLaurin, who's a guy who's been successful in this league, Charles Leno, but understand that these guys have his back and they're going to let him captain the ship. You know, they're there for them, and I think it's a good offensive group of guys to where there's not any divas that are gonna, you know, sit there and intimidate this young quarterback and try to force him to, you know, throw him the ball. You know what I mean? So that's him being confident in himself and just knowing I run this thing is going to show. And I think he's done that pretty well, especially handling this whole offense.
I got you. A last question I have for you, brother. A lot has been said about this defense. You know, one could argue is maybe because the offense is not at the tier level that they should be at the moment. But this defense coming in 4 years together, they have been lights out thus far at training camp. Ron Rivera talked about it. Do you see that? Is this more, when you see that on training camp, do you think it's more so based on the offense not being up to speed, or is this defense really that dominant right now?
You know, generally defenses are going to start off quicker because they can go out there and say, hey, you're running cover 3, and the offense has installed 20 plays, right? So I'm trying to figure out of one of my 20 plays, which one's right and make sure I run it right. And they're like, hey, cover 3 is cover 3, right? Man is man. It's whenever they start to understand how they want to play different route combinations, the defense has to work as a unit. I said it on my show. I think they're set on defense. I don't see anything crazy happening. I think the names that you see are the names that you're going to get. And it's a good thing because Cam Curl can communicate with Jamin and understand, hey, I've got your help over here on this play. He can communicate with the Forbes, and they know where they can fit in.
Right.
And right now, Jack Del Rio has to be choosing just what combination of playmakers does he want to put out there on the field, and each unit is going to have a different personality. Each unit is going to be its own, you know, weapon in and of itself, right? Like if you're going up against a team who's got 4 wide, like whenever Miami comes to town or whoever's traveling where, like imagine you're going to see a Forbes out there all over the place. You're going to see a St. Juice all over. Like you're going to see 3-4 corners probably pretty consistently, right? And it's good to have talented players that can do those things, because there's times in the past where it's like, you're like, man, if we just had one more DB to cover that, then it ends up being a weak point. Like, what did I look at? It was the Green Bay game way back 2010, and love Lorenzo Alexander, but the man lined up in 6 different positions on like 2 or 3 defensive drives from nose tackle to D end to playing linebacker over Jordy Nelson. That, like, I don't want 97 over Jordy Nelson. That's a mismatch all day, right? And now you got guys like a Cam Curl who can play in the slot and play the run at the same time, but can cover. That versatility is going to be paramount for this defense. Is going to make them set themselves apart. So I think they are a special unit. They really are.
I like the way that you put that with Jack Del Rio, the different combinations. It's almost like playing Russian roulette with a revolver, except you're not pointing at your own head. You're pointing at the offense's head. I like the way that you put that, Anthony. There's so many different ways that they can attack these offenses. I can't thank you enough, brother. But before you get out of here, would you like to plug your social media handle on Twitter and your podcast, so where folks can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. The Twitter handle changed. It's Rated Armstrong. So I made it match across all those platforms. When Elon took my blue check, I was free to change my name as I set forth. So I went ahead, took advantage. Still ain't paid that money. I ain't worried about the blue check. So I'm good. But no, Rated Armstrong on Twitter. Hit me up over there. Believe Commanders, BLEAV Commanders. That's my show, Believe in Commanders with Brian Murphy. New episode dropped today. We're talking about Jamin Davis. So check it out on all your favorite streaming platforms.
I appreciate you, brother. Now, are you coming out to any games this year?
Man, we've got the game against Buffalo has been circled as the alumni game,
Okay.
and I am trying to make plans on getting up there for that. Just don't know which day because they got some golf that's up in there, but I don't know
Okay.
if I can get away for like 4 days. I don't know. That may be too long.
All of us dads out there completely understand what you're saying right now, Anthony.
Yeah,
Hopefully, you do able to come for that alumni game. I'll try to make sure to get out there with it to try to be able to meet you, brother. It's been a pleasure
yeah,
as always, Anthony. You give us such great info, brother. I hope you have a great night.
absolutely, man. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks, Ant. Have a
Appreciate you,
good
man.
one.
Have a good weekend.
All right,
Enjoy,
everybody.
y'all.
We just spoke with the man, Mr. Anthony Armstrong, the Jet.
That's my guy.
Dude, I love his explanations and the
I
way that
know.
he kind of talks about this football team because it's huge. But before we get into our fan questions, and we're joined by our next guest and Matthew Paris here in a minute, I did want to answer some fan questions, but also real quick, I just wanted to say David Bada tore his tricep yesterday, so it seems like he's going to be out for a very long time, most likely the season, I believe. I think he went on IR. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
he's going to be able to be activated from that if he went on IR before the start of the season, but also Sadiq Charles's calf, which is huge. That's not a great thing to hear because Sadiq Charles was possibly going to be the starting left guard here, and obviously Chris Paul has stepped in the meantime, and he's done a good job from what we've heard. But not good news for Sadiq Charles or David Bada. I hope they do better. Now let's get on to our fan questions. This one's from the Colonel Hall. He asks, "We've had some nice surprises out of training camp so far. Notably, our undrafted free agent Mason Brooks and wide receiver Bryson Tremaine have been singled out for exceptional performance by the coaching staff. If both of them were to make the 53-man roster, who are the players they nudged out?"
Oh man. So going back, I think whenever someone asked what the surprise cut would be, I put Sadiq Charles out there. And this was mainly the reason why, because of the injury factor where he can't really stay on the field. And maybe the emergence of a guy like Mason Brooks makes him look at a guy like Sadiq Charles and say, hey, do we keep him around? Do we like maybe cut him and bring him back on the practice squad to open up a roster spot for someone else to make the 53-man roster? So just because they drafted him in, I think it was the fourth round, third or fourth round, I don't see them 100% doing it, but that could be maybe one. But as far as that, and then the receiver, I was hearing rumbles that obviously they have Kaz Allen from UCLA that they brought in maybe to be the kick returner and also the punt returner. You're hearing rumblings of Jahan Dotson being at practice, being back there catching punts as well again, going back to last year as well when he was a rookie. So they just never used him as a punt returner during the season, but maybe they get frisky with it and use him as a punt returner. So I'll say maybe a guy like Dax Milne, who
Damn you.
usually gets on the back end of the roster as a receiver, but mainly is just the punt return guy that they get back there. So if Kaz Allen emerges as a guy, or Tremaine maybe as well, maybe a guy like Dax Milne is pushed out of the room also.
Yeah, that's a really good one that you brought up. I will say Mason Brooks. That name is going to be intriguing because we got to remember a lot of people say, "Well, he's an undrafted free agent. How good can he possibly be?" I know the smart, educated people are going to say, you can't always say that, but Charles Leno was an undrafted free agent in himself, right? And so you have to imagine that it doesn't really matter where you're drafted. It more so matters in the situation that you go into and how much
Yep.
work you put into it, i.e., Terry McLaurin. That being said, I feel really bad for Sadiq because I don't want Sadiq to lose out on the opportunity to get better. But that being said, he's had more than enough ample time to be able to do so, right? And so you can't really feel all that bad, but it's a business, man. This is the way it goes down. I think you're right on par with that, and also with Dax Milne. I know Anthony said Curtis Samuel is at a possibility of getting cut, and maybe the money factor has something to do with that. Maybe not really 100% sure, but I would much rather have more weapons than not.
Yeah,
And I don't
I
want to just
mean,
cut ties with Curtis because Curtis could help us more so on the field than he would be by getting cut.
exactly. And like De'Ami Brown is a different type of receiver than Curtis Samuel is.
Right.
Like Curtis Samuel can run the route tree. You can use him in the run game, kind of like the chess piece on the field where like obviously De'Ami Brown has the connection with Sam Howell. He's getting better in the route tree, but he's still kind of like that burner deep threat type of guy that can stretch the field. So I'd rather have the guy still on the team that can still kind of be like the Swiss Army knife kind of receiver where you can put him anywhere on the field, put him in the backfield, like I said. So hopefully Curtis Samuel doesn't get cut because I think that's a guy that could also benefit from an offense like this under a creative guy like Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, and you always are glad to hear about guys like Bryson Tremaine and Mason Brooks working for a dream come true, and they're putting in that work, dude. Good for them.
Yeah.
The next question from the Colonel: What can you tell your listeners about what to expect at Military Appreciation Day on Tuesday, August 8th?
I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know what to expect because I don't really know what they have on the itinerary, like planned as far as that goes. But you can expect me, Kyle, and I guess maybe Reed. We'll see with that because he's 50-50 on everything. But a couple other people from the Discord, a couple other podcasters out there. You're gonna expect obviously what you've been. Well, you don't have Twitter, but if you've seen any of the pictures or videos from training camp, it's thousands of people packed to the brim and everyone having a good time, smiling. The players are loving it. So only thing I can say you can expect is to have a good time and then to be good vibes and a good day.
Yes, and I just want to put this caveat in there before I say anything, Colonel. I just want to say I'm not doing this to be malice. I'm just doing it to garner excitement. But I heard they're bringing an aircraft carrier and they're putting it on the practice field. So make sure you guys come out. You can see an aircraft carrier in person. I've heard they're delivering AC-130s. They're going to drop like cash down. It's really, really cool. Airdrop and possibly some paratroopers. I'm not really sure, Colonel. I just hope that as many people could come out as possible that watch this show. You know, that's the least that, like, being able to meet people, shake their hands and say thank you just for watching our show and contributing and just being kind people for doing so. That's what I would really like to do. So if you watch this show, it come out for the 8th on Tuesday. You'll be able to meet all of us, and we would love to be able to say thank you. Just be able to meet you, shake your hand, and everything like that. Besides that, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what to expect because if you would have asked me the day before the start of overall training camp what to expect, I would not have told you like the bleachers. I would not. I don't know, Colonel, to be honest, but I do expect that our veterans are going to be treated with a lot of
I've
respect.
heard they had some really good food out there. I will say that. You can expect some good food if you get hungry.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
They do have a VIP access, but that's more so for the gold membership ticket guys, the season ticket holders. Obviously, we're not season ticket holders, unfortunately. But I'm not expecting VIP access. I wouldn't even imagine what we do with it. But I would imagine that should go to military veterans. If there's anybody there on Salute Day, that's who the VIP access should be going towards. Thank you for the question, Colonel. It was fantastic. Now let's go to our next question. This one is from the Discord chat server hall. This is from Tim Towner. This is from New Era Deuce. Would you rather Chase Young get 2 sacks week 1 or 2 pressures that lead to 2 turnovers?
Ooh, week one. So obviously, two turnovers would be great because depending on who gets them, a guy like Forbes, who's known to take it to the house in college, could take it to the crib. But I want to see Chase get 2 sacks because he's coming back off the injury, and I feel like it'll build confidence within him and within himself, even more confidence he already has because obviously he's already a confident person. But I think it'll build confidence as far as him on the field and like for him to be like, okay, like I'm back now. Like I feel like my old self. I got 2 sacks like to start the season off, like, and maybe he'll build off of that. So I love turnovers. 2 of them would be great, especially because we were bottom of the league last year. So to have that in the first game of the season, get the week one rolling, that'd be great. But I want to see Chase get 2 sacks instead of 2 pressures.
Yeah, if Chase has 2 sacks, he probably should go see a doctor. It doesn't sound normal. But now we are joined by our next guest from the Washington Times, Mr. Matthew Paris. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Thursday evening, Matt. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's raining over here. I wish it was a
Is it
little more
raining?
beautiful.
Yeah.
Just pass through here.
The only reason I
maybe
say
it's
that
working
is
its way.
it felt like fall out there today. I've been so
Yeah,
used to 100-degree weather inside the buildings. When I walked out today, that breeze, it just felt fantastic. But that being said, Matthew, I want to kind of get your opinion on practice today because they were in pads the past couple days. They took the kind of day off, had not a lazy day, a chill day, you could say. But what was your biggest takeaway from the padded practices when you did see it?
Yeah.
Did you see the offense do well?
Yes and no. I thought the offensive line held their own. It was kind of the area I was paying the most attention to. Sam Howell kind of has had what he's always been in camp so far, and it was a bit up and down. The throws that are money are just really, really tight and solid throws, impressive. But you do see a lot of inconsistency, which I think is to be expected from a young quarterback. But you do see the inaccuracy. you see him kind of, I think, figuring things out, trying to figure things out
Right.
on the fly and having to regroup based on that. So it's been a bit of a mixed bag. I think I think the defense is clearly the better unit between the two teams, but we could have said that going into camp. So have learned a little here and there, but very much a work in progress so far.
Right. Something that the fan base learned over the past couple of days is about Jamin Davis and the speeding tickets and saga. And I think that they just got continued again today or something like that. So can you kind of explain what's going on with that situation? And do you think this is going to affect him for week 1 and going beyond that?
Yeah, it remains to be seen of how this impacts his availability. I was in court today, and I went there, and what the judge basically did was he kicked it down the road even further. So what happened on Tuesday was that the judge said, all right, this plea deal that you're trying to enter, no good. It's not severe enough. Come back to us. Or they appealed that ruling, and then they got another judge in front of a new judge, and they entered an agreement that basically said was that this judge found more or less the same. He said it wasn't substantially different enough. And so now it goes into August 31st, and if that happens and they can agree to a plea deal that the next judge finds palatable, it'll either be Jamin Davis will serve jail time then and there, like in terms of he could serve it there, or what will likely happen, or what Davis's lawyers will try to do, is they'll ask for a deferred like a delayed reporting for jail time. So he'll try to serve it after the season, but if he does have to serve it, that August 31st date is actually key because there's a 10-day gap between the end of the preseason, or a 2-week gap rather, between the end of the preseason and the beginning of the regular season. So, for instance, today, Jamin Davis's lawyers proposed up to 8 days jail time with a minimum of at least 4 days served. And so let's say he just serves the 4, then, he would be out in time for the regular season. But it really just depends on how much jail time the Commonwealth and Jamin Davis's attorneys agree upon, and then whether that's good enough for the judge.
Yeah, dude, it seems like the judge is like Eric Bieniemy or something. My goodness, it seems like it doesn't matter. But I noticed at Ron Rivera's presser today, you had a very particular question that I appreciated a lot, and you had asked Rivera about Quan Martin and his usage if his spot was solidified on that defense. What have you seen out of Quan Martin to kind of spark that question to Rivera?
Yeah, well, the reason I asked it was that in the spring, I thought Quan Martin had kind of been playing all over the place, a lot with the ones, like, they would kind of rotate these slot cornerbacks in and out of Benjamin St. Juste, Wild Goose, and then Quan Martin would really be the third guy. And so far in camp, we haven't really seen, in my opinion, Quan Martin with the ones a lot. It's been a lot with the twos. Rivera said that he, has been doing different spots. It's the Buffalo nickel. He's playing both safety spots. But I think, to me, and kind of how I read it we'll see how the preseason plays out. But I think it says right now that a guy like Percy Butler is ahead of Quan Martin, at least for now. And that Percy Butler has kind of taken that step forward, and they want to see what he does on the field. And another thing to take from it, too, is that I think there is some overlap between Cam Curl and Quan Martin, because Cam Curl right now is that Buffalo nickel role, which is kind of where, if you were to guess where Quan Martin would play as a rookie most of the time, it would be in that spot. So right now they're trusting Cam Curl with that.
I understand that completely. Now we are joined by our co-host, Michael Reed. If you are there, Michael, do you have a question for Mr. Paris? And doesn't seem like he is. Sorry, Hall, go.
It's all good. So you've been out at the training camps and whatnot. I think there are 8 practices in so far. Obviously, one of the big storylines coming into the season in training camp is Chase Young. And it looks kind of like I've been seeing him in interviews. He kind of looks like he has his confidence. It kind of looks like he has his swagger back a little bit. How's he looked on the field as far as the first couple of days of padded practice?
Yeah, I thought he's looked explosive. On some sides, it's hard to still get a gauge for it, but I think what's really noticeable is, that brace came off. It was so bulky before, and you do see him be a little bit more comfortable of which he's getting off the line. And I think what Rivera has said is, if you remember back in the 2021 season, Rivera and a lot of people took issue with the type of pass rusher that Chase Young was trying to be. He was doing this like little stutter step move to try and get around defenders. And you've seen that kind of mostly gone from his game. He still does it sometimes, but it's more so straight line pass rush, use that speed, use that power. And I think that serves Chase Young a lot more as a pass rusher.
That's totally understandable. Now, to wrap this up, Paris, I only have a couple more questions for you. But let's talk about the tight ends, because Cole Turner spoke to reporters a couple days, I think it was yesterday or the day before. Obviously, Logan Thomas caught a touchdown pass, I believe, today, and actually threw a trick pass at practice today. Kind of talk about the tight ends and how they've looked so far at camp.
Yeah, it's an interesting group. It's a thin group. I think this team is really banking on Logan Thomas returning to form another year away from that ACL, another year removed from that ACL injury, and kind of expecting him to be more of what he was in 2020. If that doesn't happen, it's a huge question mark. I think Cole Turner has actually looked really solid. I think I've noticed him more than John Bates, but I don't necessarily know if the coaching staff would put Turner in a position to be tight end 2 right now. But I think it's still open for discussion. It just depends on how involved tight ends are in this offense. I mean, based on everything that they've been saying, if you look at Kansas City's offense, tight ends are featured in it. So we'll have to see how that develops throughout the season. But for right now, I expect a lot of Logan Thomas. He's a very important piece for him, for them. And so if he can stay healthy and return to another form, I think it's going to be pretty big. But it just depends on how he does.
Yeah, now talk to me about Mason Brooks. A lot of people on Twitter have been saying that this guy has really played himself into not the starting lineup, but into playing time, has looked good. What have you seen and heard about Mason Brooks, the undrafted free agent?
Yeah, he's definitely there's a guy every year, right? That
Right.
is the undrafted free agent who is this guy. He's quickly becoming that guy. And Juan Castillo, who used to work with the tight ends, now he was back working with the offensive line, more of his natural position. You can tell the energy and the passion that he has for him, because Mason Brooks has really kind of held his own in those one-on-one individual battles. Now, to damper the enthusiasm a little bit, we asked Rivera about him today. I think JP did. And Rivera smiled and acknowledged it was a fun story, but he did caution that, he's a bit away still as a project. I think penciling him in as a starter is premature, but I do think it's interesting, guys, that, this is a group. John Masco's gone, but this is a group in Carolina that found Andrew Norwell when he was an undrafted free agent, eventually became an all-pro now. I think that's, way too much hype for Mason Brooks as, random guy in training camp, but I think it is something to monitor, and it's fun, and I hope he does well, because the more fun stories to write about, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And now to wrap this up, Paris, I only have one more question for you. But talk to me about Terry McLaurin. Did you watch that pivot interview? What was your biggest takeaway from that?
Yeah, it was I haven't watched all of it, but of the clips I've seen, it's great that Ryan Clark is here to be on and kind of provide a national level and expose Terry to an audience, because as retrospective and inflective, as much as Terry McLaurin was willing to kind of open up, kind of does that all the time. Group sessions are different, but just a very forthcoming guy, and a very, one of the best guys in the locker room in terms of just to deal with, a true pro. And it's just great that people are getting to see that side of him. And, it was always there, but it's been overshadowed by the Dan Snyder, all the stuff and all the scandals that have done it. And so I think Washington's fan base obviously knows kind of what a guy Terry McLaurin is, but I think it's just a chance for the rest of the NFL community to kind of realize who Terry McLaurin is.
And real quick, that was a bad question to send you off on. But Emmanuel Forbes, a 0 out of 10.
Oh, yeah.
What have you seen out of him? Are you 10 being very, very surprised this guy is going to be a starter, future playmaker? 0, we should temper our expectations a little bit.
Well, I think I really like the kid. I'll put it that way. I think I'm not surprised that he's in line to be a starter. Obviously, being a first round pick, you are kind of naturally. But I think the thing that stands out to me about his game is the anticipation and honestly the physicality. You know, he's 180 pounds. People questioned his skinniness, but that guy gets in there and breaks balls up and, you know, just seems to have a really good feel for the game. And they talked a lot about him being kind of that, you know, ball hawk and forcing turnovers. Honestly, if that doesn't happen the way that he's performed, and if he can keep this up, I think they'll be perfectly happy with just the type of corner he is in this zone match scheme. So it's a lot of hype I just gave, but I've been really impressed with him. I haven't really seen anything that has kind of tempered those expectations.
Pour it on, Matt. I'm all about it. Matt, I can't thank you enough for joining us on this rainy Thursday evening. I can't thank you enough, brother. I hope you go enjoy training camp this weekend. We will be there on the 8th. I hope I will be able to say hi to you from way far away up in the bleachers. We'll wave at you. How about that? Matt,
Cool,
I can't thank you enough, brother.
Sure, and if I could just plug one of my stories real quick.
Of course.
I never do this, but I think it's interesting. I took a look at Josh Harris's using the word Redskins in the name, and I asked the team spokesperson kind of the thoughts on whether there'd been a shift, and I thought the response back I got was really interesting. So
Okay.
check that out on
Cool.
the Washington Times or my Twitter feed.
Absolutely. You can check him, Matthew Paris, on Twitter for the Washington Times. Go and make sure you check out his recent report. I want to read that now, Paris. I did not see that, so I'm going to go check that out. Thank you, brother. Have a good night.
Yep. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt.
Appreciate it.
Of course, I love Matt because, like, of course you can be able to talk about your story on him, man.
I know, right?
How many times I've asked him to supply his stuff? It like usually doesn't say anything, but then this time he's like, "Oh, I got something." And
The one time you're not like, if you want to plug anything you're working on, he's just like, no, wait, no.
But dude, I felt so bad. That was a great one. But let's get into our fan questions. And Reed, are you still there, my dude?
I've been here the whole time. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You must have been in a dead zone then.
Reed,
Yeah,
you're always
can I
with me. You're always with me, Reed.
I'm always with Hall. Yeah. Can I just say also, I've been listening to you guys talk on the way while driving. What? How do we have listeners? We're so goddamn boring, dude.
That's
No,
why
I'm just
you're
kidding.
here.
Yeah, you guys are good. You guys are good. You guys are good people.
Thanks, Reed. That was very it's building trust and confidence, and I really appreciate you that.
I ask myself every time anyway, so it's all good.
Now, let's get into our Discord questions. This one's from Scott Hartley. Reed. Every year there is one or two undrafted free agents who make the team. Mason Brooks is getting a lot of love this week. Do you think he makes the team, and what undrafted free agent makes it, if any, this time around?
You know what? We haven't even played a preseason game, and I am 100,010% in on Mason Brooks. Give me one of them old good old white boy undrafted free agent offensive linemen. We haven't had one of them boys in a while. I like them. I'm in on it, dude. Just the idea of him gets me excited. He's got a mullet.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say because
He looks like Trent Murphy in disguise. He looks like
Dude,
Trent Murphy in disguise.
He does. It's
He
funny.
looks like Trent Murphy with long hair.
Yeah. And fatter, way fatter.
I'm not sure if he would appreciate that, Reed, but okay. What about you, Hall?
He's an O-line.
I will say a guy that I talked about earlier. I'll say Kaz Allen, the undrafted receiver / kick return guy out of UCLA. We saw him put the burners on in like a little Twitter clip when during practice 101 drills. So I think that if he can stick the kick return role, he's a sure on to make the team.
Yeah, I like your two selections there. I would have said Tim DeMorad if he didn't get sent away already, unfortunately. But I think you guys picked probably the best two possibilities. I would not eliminate Mitchell Tinsley from Penn State. I think he is a very good route runner, could find his way onto this squad at some point. Scott Hartley. I think the wide receiver depth here is amazing. Now, the next question from Scott Reed is, we've seen the 5-1-5. Do you think that we use this package a lot this season?
A lot, a lot, a lot.
Reed. Hall, go.
Yeah, I think that especially we don't know what's gonna happen with Jamin Davis as far as is he gonna be in jail? Is he gonna have to do weekends in jail, whatever the case may be. But if he's gonna miss or maybe he gets suspended from the league, like maybe a game or two, who knows? But yeah, if they're missing a guy like Jamin Davis and they gotta go with Cody Barton and
Khalid.
I don't know, Khalid Hudson or David Mayo, someone like that, I could definitely see them going to the 5-1-5 a little bit more. And I think also, if you look at the teams we faced this year and teams like the Dolphins, the Bills, I don't know who else. I got to look at the schedule. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, teams like this put 3-4 wide receivers out at the same time, spread you out a lot on offense. I think that'd be a good kind of rebuttal to that, spreading them out, put the 5 defensive linemen in there, 5 defensive backs, and 1 linebacker, and get a nice pass rush, but maybe like some one-on-one blocks up front, and have 5 DBs on the field to hold down the back end. So I could definitely see them using it a lot. I would probably say 35% of the time, maybe not even that much, maybe like 25% of the time.
I hope that it's less than that, Scott. And
Yeah, no.
the reason why I say that is the 5-1-5 is a run-stopping front. That's the purpose of it, to clog those run lanes, to not allow the release of the center to be so easy, because that hampered them a lot last season. If they're in the 5-1-5 a lot, that means the opposing team is running the ball a lot, which means that we do not have the lead. So I hope that we're not in the 5-1-5 a lot, because then they're running the ball and trying to take the clock out away from us. But that being said, I would love for this unit to be as productive in the 5-1-5 as they are in a 4-2-5, or 4-2-4, whatever. That's what I would really enjoy and love to be able to see. That being said, I can't guarantee it, but I do think that the 5-1-5 is a good staple of this defense, is something that you can use in those short yardage situations like Hall talked about, where you don't need to give up the luxury of the deep field defensive formation. You're not giving that away in that 5-1-5, and that's what you can kind of do when there's more heavier fronts. So that's why it kind of allows you to have more balance. Reed, are you there? No, he is not. Now, this next question from Tim Towner. With Sadiq down with a calf strain and Jamin possibly heading to the big house, are there any free agent O-linemen or linebackers that pique your interest? I think there might be enough money for one, but not both.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the.
Oh, is he there?
Yep. I haven't looked at the linebacker free agents. I had to look at the list and see who's out there, but just a guy that's off the top of my head that obviously everyone has been, I guess, talking about, enamored with on the free agent market still, is Dalton Risner, the guard from the Denver Broncos last year. Surprised he hasn't been signed in camp yet, but maybe it's a money thing, maybe it's he's getting healthy thing. I don't know, but again, there's a guy like Sadiq Charles, which has always been kind of like my in the wings take. If something happens with Sadiq, maybe someone gets injured in camp, which it looks like Sadiq is a little bit nicked up already, and maybe a guy like Chris Paul. Obviously, I think I saw on Twitter that someone was listening to John Combs' podcast, and he told them, or some of the defensive linemen said that they told John Combs that they think that Chris Paul is already the best guard in the room as it is right now. So maybe he wins the starting job and they bring in a guy like Dalton Risner, in case of a guy like Cosme who tends to get banged up a lot too. You got a little insurance plan.
Yeah, because, I've always said a lot that you have to be going into a season expecting that your starters are going to go down at every position, and you have to be comfortable with having somebody in relief of that happening, because you can't guarantee that no injuries are going to happen. Nobody can have a season like the Philadelphia Eagles did last season, where just you stay healthy all year long. It just doesn't happen, and so you have to be prepared for it. That being said, I am kind of wondering where they're looking at it with Jamin, because Jamin is kind of a thorn in the backside, but that Cody Barton pick does help a little bit. He has stood out a little bit more over the past couple of days, been a good leader, and I'm made his voice out there, kind of taking the reins away from Kalik a little bit and how much he's been talked about. I would like to see another O-lineman added here, like maybe like Jackson Carman or something like that. You never know. Reed, I can hear your car. Are you there yet? Oh, wow. You sound like a garbage disposal.
You guys are breaking up, so probably not.
You sound a lot better now. Nope, he's not.
And he's out.
Hey, but real quick, Tony Franchise, I'm sorry, Tony, had asked like a similar question to Tim's about Sadiq. Could you see another O-lineman being brought in? And any word on kick or punt return? I know this is a big thing for you.
As far as kick return, no, because I don't think we're going to be able to see that till the preseason game next week and a couple games into the preseason. Punt return, I know we talked about earlier, they had Jahan Dotson back there catching punts and warm-ups and like during like special teams, I guess Trex Wave, somebody's kicking to him. So maybe you see a guy like Jahan Dotson back there if they want to get like maybe an explosive play. But I can definitely, those are things you got to wait till the preseason to see because they're not doing like live like special teams drills that I've seen so far on Twitter. So we'll wait till the preseason to see anything about the kick return and punt return, guys.
Yeah, and Reed fancies himself a big man lover. So Reed, is there any offensive lineman you could see Washington going to bring in?
Hey, Mason Brooks, dude.
All right, that's true. That's a good one.
I told you I'm all in on. I'm on the Mason train, dog. Mason Brooks is my favorite player. He's always been my favorite player.
All the way going back to Ole Miss, man. All the way going.
I remember that.
Yeah.
But any word on kick or punt return? I did hear the hypothetical that the NFL is looking into the XFL rules of kickoff, whereas instead of you running where the kicker actually kicks the ball off from that 35, you actually stand like at the opponent's 35. So there's only about 20 yards separating between the blockers and the guys coming to tackle the returner. It's really interesting to see them do that. But I would like to see if Antonio Gibson, depending on his usage, I would like to see him back there at punt return. He did bobble. He did bobble the punt return.
I want to see him on the kick returns.
Yeah.
Why?
I want to see more violence, dog. They shouldn't change that rule. I'm trying to watch big men get hurt and slam into each other and stuff. I don't care. I don't play.
No, the only reason being is they're basically taking kick return out of the game.
I know.
It's dumb. I want to see violence, man. That's the most violent play in the game. I like it.
I'm sure you do, dude. I'm sure you do. Now, let's go to our next question. This one is on Twitter that we had submitted, and this one, I'm pretty sure is from Hercules. Will you guys get VIP access to August 8th training camp? I know Reed is probably working on that hard.
Oh, naturally. Yeah. We got bottle service, too.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I wish KD was coming on the 8th. That dude is
I know, right?
gigantic. Man.
Yeah, I'll try to call him, but I don't know if he'll show up.
Oh, thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah, send him that text, see what he says.
Yeah, I'll hit him up with his big-ass hockey stick feet.
Hey, we got to talk about carpooling, by the way, because you never got back to us on how you're getting there on the 8th.
Oh, I'm driving.
You are? Are you going to call our carpool with Hall?
I'm driving from PA, dog.
Oh, my bad.
Member?
My dad got a new whip. I sent a picture in our group chat, and it's a convertible Mercedes. And I'm like, it's a sweet looking car, dude. And I was like kind of blown away. I was like, my dad doesn't he's never talked about owning a car like that. I'm kind of weirded out by it. Like, you going through a midlife crisis, man? So I got to talk to him at training camp. Like, you all right, bro?
Make sure he's good.
Yeah, that's going to wrap us up for this episode, everybody. I appreciate it. I'm sorry it's been so boring, like Reed had commented on earlier. I appreciate you guys.
You did good.
Reed, it's okay.
It's so boring. I'm making myself yawn.
Yeah. Do you hear them laugh at you, Kyle? Listen to everybody laughing at you.
All right, everybody. That's going to wrap us up for this episode. We'll see you guys again on Monday. And remember, they're possibly bringing in an aircraft carrier onto the practice field on Tuesday the 8th at Salute Day. So make sure you come check it out and see the big aircraft carrier. Come see the AC-130s. There might be a tank. I've heard that they might be having a drone come in, drop some bombs on some blow-ups and stuff like that. So come check it out, man. It's going to be fun. Lots of fun. All right, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm Kyle.
Come to the active war zone on Tuesday that Kyle was talking about.
Yeah. That's Washington training camp for you, war zone.
And I'm Barack Obama. That's me. Obama.
Why is it so funny? It's not even
I don't know.
it's just-
Wow, Kyle. What a
This is
guy.
so random.
What a guy you are, Kyle.
Oh man.
All right, everybody. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great, safe weekend. If you're going out to training camp, make sure you hydrate. Make sure you wear your sunscreen. Don't be like Reed, looking like a crab by Sunday evening. All right, everybody. We'll see you guys on Monday. Washington football. Woo! Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kyle. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. And if you liked what you saw, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you get notified when anything new is uploaded to the channel. Also, we just launched theburgundyzone.com. You can go there and find all of our latest news, articles, and the latest episodes that are uploaded. Again, we also have the Discord chat server, where all of our VIP folks are in, like Andy Burrows, Scott Hartley, Sergio Martin is in there as well. Don't miss out on the Discord chat server. Go and check that out. Until next time, everybody, Washington football. Woo!